Cynthia McKinney mourns the dead of the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza. People of the US and the world must end Israeli impunity now. The 31st of May 2010. I'm outraged at Israel's latest criminal act. I mourn with my fellow Free Gaza travelers, the lives that have been lost by Israel's needless senseless act against unarmed humanitarian activists. But I'm even more outraged that once again, Israel's actions have been aided and abetted by a US political class that has become corrupted beyond belief due to its reliance on Zionist campaign finance and penetration by Zionist zealots for whom no US weapons system is too much for the Israeli war machine, and the silence of the world's onlookers whose hearts have grown cold with indifference. I recently visited the offices of IHH, the Turkish humanitarian organization that sponsored one of the Freedom Flotilla boats, and that was targeted by the Israelis for its murderous rampage. Reports are still coming in as to the full extent of the senseless Israeli violence. Of course, I expect Israel's apologists in the press, and in the United States government, to shift into high gear, to support Israel's lying machine. Take note of their names. The 12,000 internet squatter/written word grenade throwers, hired by the Israeli Foreign Ministry to defend Israel and attack peace activists online, are already busy spreading their orchestrated disinformation in cyberspace. Be very careful what you read and believe from special interest press and the internet. You could be reading one of Israel's hired hacks. As a news diversion from what Israel has just done, I suspect that we can also expect to see a lot of historical footage of war's atrocities on television. Today is Memorial Day in the United States, a day long ago set aside to remember the sacrifices of US war dead. I encouraged and supported US Liberty veteran Joe Meadas's participation in the Freedom Flotilla. Unfortunately, the fate of the US Liberty innocents on the high seas, while in international waters, has now been visited on the participants in the Freedom Flotilla, in large measure, because of the congressional and presidential level cover-up of the 1967 Israeli attack on that US surveillance ship. Combine this with the failure of just about every other effort to hold Israel accountable for its crimes against humanity, war crimes, genocide, and crimes against the peace. Belgium and Spain changed their domestic laws of universal jurisdiction after Israeli appeals to do so. The entire musical chairs gang of rotating Israeli leadership are war criminals. During my imprisonment in Israel for attempting to take crayons to the children of Gaza, I called Israel a failed state. If Israel is threatened by unarmed, humanitarian activists, to the point of massacring them, then it is a failed state. Israel is a failed nuclear state. Obama's most recent granting of an additional $205 million for Israeli missile defense is unconscionable, when in the same week, reports revealed for the first time Israel's offer of nuclear weapons to apartheid South Africa. Just last week, a paper bearing the signature of former Israeli Prime Minister Shimon Peres was released by South Africa, revealing that in 1975, Israel could offer South Africa nuclear weapons in 3 sizes. South Africa's then Minister of Defense, P.W. Botha, was South Africa's signatory to the letter. This information would make the entire Obama administration look sadly farcical as it points an accusing finger at Iran, except that US obeisance to the Israeli bloodthirst is deadly serious, and with deadly outcomes. Earlier this month, Israel was granted admission to the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, a direct affront to ongoing boycott, divestment, and sanctions, BDS, efforts across the world. Once again, Israel has thumbed its nose at the global community with bloody results because it can. I'm proud to serve on the Bertrand Russell Tribunal on Palestine. Its next sitting will be in London, where we will examine corporate complicity in Israel's crimes against Palestine. The tribunal will sit from November 5th, 7. Please put this on your calendar. We all must do what we can, where we are to end wars against the people at home, and wars against human rights abroad. Finally, a friend just sent a message to me saying that the Israelis had lost their minds. Sadly, based on the past, the Israelis could very well conclude that they can do anything, imprison me for trying to take love to the children of Gaza, and kill humanitarian activists trying to do the same because they know, in the end, they'll get away with it. Instead, I would suggest that we are the ones who have lost our minds, our souls, our spirits, and our human dignity, if we allow the Israelis to get away with murder again and we do nothing. I'm calling on the people of the United States to change course now. On this Memorial Day 2010, I'm stunned and outraged beyond belief while mourning the dead of the Freedom Flotilla to Gaza. Update on Israeli attack on humanitarian boats. By Free Gaza Team Cyprus, the 1st of June 2010. The UN Security Council calls for impartial, credible investigation of Israeli boat raid. The raid in international waters on the aid convoy headed to Gaza left at least 16 civilians dead after an emergency session wrapped up in the early hours this morning. The council agreed to language condemning the acts that resulted in the deaths and injuries aboard the Turkish vessel Mavi Marmara and the European campaign's vessel Impunity. The council requested the immediate release of the ships as well as the civilians held by Israel. The actual figure was later found to be 9 civilians dead, 1 more brain dead, and on life support. The council called for a prompt, impartial, credible, and transparent investigation conforming to international standards. The council statement also re-emphasized the importance of implementing UN Resolution 1860, which calls for the unimpeded provision and distribution of humanitarian assistance to Gaza's 1.5 million residents. The flow of aid has been severely hampered by Israel's 3-year blockade on the Gaza Strip. Yesterday, Israeli licensed attorneys filed 2 habeas briefs. One is asking for to release the passengers and the boats, so we can continue on our way to Gaza, since it was illegal to stop us in international waters. The other one is asking for information on all of the passengers, because there has been a total blackout on where the passengers are, who was wounded, and who was murdered. Lawyers are only being allowed access for 3 hours every day from 1300 hours to 1630. They have the names of 3 Palestinians still in detention: Sheikh Salah, Mohammed Zidane and Lubna Marsawa. Knesset member Hanan Zobi Ballard, who participated in the international flotilla to the Gaza Strip, said, "It was clear from the size of the force that boarded the ship that the purpose was not only to stop this sale, but to cause the largest possible number of fatalities in order to stop such initiatives in the future." Ships and their flags. By Free Gaza Team, the 1st of June 2010. Mavi Marmara, Comoros Islands, Turkey. 577 passengers and crew, 300 Turks and 277 internationals including Palestinian/Israelis. Gaza, Turkey, 18 international passengers and crew. Defny, Gaz 2nd, Kiribati, Turkey, 20 international passengers and crew. Sfindoni, 8,000. Togo, 45 international passengers and crew. Eleftheri Misagias, Sofia, Bulgaria, Greece, 11 Greek and Swedish passengers and crew. Challenger 1, Al Samoud, US, 17 American and European passengers and crew. Rachel Corrie, Cambodia, 20 Irish and Malaysian passengers and crew. Total number of passengers on board. All ships. 713 passengers. Israel is a victim of its own pathology. By Yid Seraj, founder, Gaza Community Mental Health Program, June 1, 2010. Gaza City, resorting to brute force is an expression of fear. Its deployment yesterday by the Israeli soldiers who raided and opened fire on the Freedom Flotilla en route to Gaza, killing more than 10 civilians and injuring dozens more, will not serve Israel or treat its existential anxiety. As a psychiatrist and a resident of Gaza, I understand Israel's reflexive use of force against civilians as a symptom of a structural pathology. Israel resorts to the use of maximum force as a form of intimidation. But this is the choice of the weak. It is quite possible that through Israel's actions, it is tightening its own noose. More than a decade ago, the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu published a book defending Israel's right to a place under the sun. But it is the racist desire to create a nation above nations that is the desire of Zionist extremists. In this context, peace is an anathema. The siege and war on Gaza are legitimate and justified. Israel will use every possible means to avoid reaching a peace agreement with the Palestinians. Indeed, Israel is marching rapidly toward becoming an apartheid state. Due to the Israeli blockade of Gaza, the unemployment rate is near 50%. The World Bank has stated that 90% of water in Gaza is not suitable for human consumption, 80% of the population lives on less than $1 a day, and 70% depend on charity for food supplies. Chronic malnutrition affects 15% of Gaza's children, and its serious consequences for their cognition and growth will be felt for years to come. The boats that the Israeli soldiers attacked were carrying food, medicines, and materials to build prefabricated homes for the people of Gaza. The Freedom Flotilla was a new attempt to break this Israeli blockade, condemned by the human rights community the world over. The former US President Jimmy Carter has called the blockade an assault on civilization. Justice Richard Goldstein has rightly called Israeli actions crimes against humanity. So many voices, including those of many Jews, have called upon Israel to end this draconian siege. 1.5 million Palestinians remain prisoners of the largest open-air jail on earth since Israel's attack on Gaza began in December of 2008. Then, Israel's army demolished 15,000 homes, destroyed factories and ministries, and chopped off the minarets from mosques. Even the American school in Gaza, a sprawling establishment, was completely destroyed, and Israel bombed schools run by the United Nations. Israel used illegal weapons against the people of Gaza during this war, killing hundreds and wounding thousands of civilians, including children. The attack on the Freedom Flotilla is just the latest act of Israel's violence. Now there is defiance in the streets of Gaza from people who demand that the world force Israel to respect them as human beings. For the Palestinians, this is a time for us to be reunited. It is doubtful, however, if Palestinian factions will rise to the occasion and end their internal strife as their political alliances dictate otherwise. It is also doubtful that many Arab regimes will heed the calls from their people to break the siege on Gaza, as they are not independent from external political and economic pressure. The mass killing of those on board the Freedom boats has drawn condemnation around the globe, with critical statements from the United Nations and from European capitals, but they fall short of forcing an end to the siege. As usual, these capitals and the UN await a green light from the US. At any rate, the Israeli killing of peace activists could be a turning point in the struggle to end the siege and the Israeli occupation. Dr. Iyad Seraj is the president of the Gaza Community Mental Health Program and founder of the international campaign to end the siege of Gaza. Published in the National Magistrates Court orders 1-week remand of Arab political leaders who took part in the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. A Della press release, the 2nd of June 2010. Legal defense team, the court's decision to detain the Arab political leaders who took part in the Gaza Freedom Flotilla is discriminatory and constitutes selective prosecution. They are not being detained because of their Israeli citizenship, but because they are Palestinian Arab citizens of Israel. Instead, the Israeli military, which attacked the ship and its passengers, should be investigated for violations of international law. Haifa, Israel, last night, the 1st of June 2010, Judge Dina Cohen of the Magistrates Court in Ashkelon, after a 9-hour hearing before a packed courtroom, decided to extend the detention of Arab political leaders Mr. Muhammad Zidane, the chairman of the High Follow-Up Committee for Arab Citizens of Israel, Sheikh Reed Salah, the head of the Islamic Movement in Israel, Northern Branch, and Sheikh Hamad Abu Dabs, the head of the Islamic Movement in Israel, Southern Branch, and Ms. Lubna Masawa of the Free Gaza Movement and Al-Quds University for 1 week, until the 8th of June 2010. The 4 Palestinian Arab citizens of Israel were arrested from the ship Mavi Marmara, part of the Gaza Freedom Flotilla, which was attacked by the Israeli Navy on the 31st of May 2010. Adalan attorneys Hassan Jabreen and Orna Khan, as well as attorney Hussein Abu Hussein, and attorney Khaled Zabaga of the Al Mezan Legal Center in Nazareth represented the four before the court. While no indictment has been issued, the state argues that a range of criminal offenses could apply, including conspiracy to commit an offense, and possession and use of weapons. The state prosecution clearly emphasized in court that their request to remand the leaders was made in accordance with the state's policy of investigating and detaining citizens of Israel who participated in the Gaza Freedom Flotilla. In the view of the legal defense team,